act of compassion. The rain had been falling since morning, turning the city streets into mirrors of gray. People rushed past one another, heads down, shoulders tight, each carrying worries heavier than their umbrellas. Near the old bus stop sat an elderly man, his coat thin and his hands trembling slightly as he clutched a small paper bag. Inside it were 2 pieces of bread and a note scribbled in shaky handwriting. He wasn't asking for help. He was simply waiting. A young woman named Aisha noticed him as she slowed her steps. She was already late, her phone buzzing with reminders she didn't want to face. Still, something about the man's quiet presence made her pause. Compassion, she would later realize, often begins with stopping. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. The man looked up, surprised. "I will be," he replied with a gentle smile. "I'm just resting." Aisha offered him her umbrella. He hesitated, then shook his head. "You'll need it more than me." Without another word, she sat beside him instead. The rain soaked the edge of her scarf, but neither of them moved. She listened as he spoke about his late wife, about how he still brought bread to the park every Friday because it reminded him of simpler days. No one had asked him to share these stories in a long time. When the bus arrived, Aisha stood and helped him up. Before leaving, she slipped her lunch into his paper bag and pressed a small note into his hand. It read, "You are not invisible." The man's eyes filled with tears. He didn't say thank you. He didn't need to. That evening, Aisha reached home late, soaked and tired, but lighter somehow. She hadn't changed the world. She hadn't solved anyone's problems. But she had offered time, presence, and dignity. And sometimes, an act of compassion is simply reminding someone that they matter. The next Friday, the rain returned as if it remembered the old man, as if it knew where to fall. Aisha hadn't planned to go back to the bus stop, yet her feet carried her there on their own, guided by a quiet thought she couldn't shake. He was there again, sitting on the same bench, holding the same paper bag, neater this time, carefully folded at the top. When he saw her, his face brightened with a warmth that surprised them both. "I was hoping you might come," he said. Aisha smiled and sat beside him. This time, she brought tea in a small thermos. She poured it slowly, the steam rising between them like a fragile promise. The man introduced himself as Mr. Rahman. He told her about the factory where he had worked for 30 years, the friends who slowly disappeared into their own lives, and the silence that grew louder after retirement. His voice never complained, it simply remembered. Aisha listened. Not politely, truly. She didn't check her phone. She didn't rush his pauses. For Mr. Rahman, this attention felt like a gift he had forgotten existed. As people passed by, some glanced at them with curiosity, others with indifference. But one young boy stopped. He watched how Aisha leaned closer when Mr. Rahman spoke, how she laughed softly at his old jokes. The boy tugged at his mother's hand and whispered something. The mother looked back, then smiled. She returned moments later with a packet of biscuits and placed it gently beside Mr. Rahman. Compassion, it seemed, was contagious. Before leaving, Mr. Rahman handed Aisha the folded note from last week. "I kept it," he said. "On days when I feel forgotten, I read it." Aisha felt a tightness in her chest she couldn't explain. She realized then that kindness doesn't always move in one direction. What she thought was a small act had given someone strength, and in return, it had given her purpose. As she walked away, the rain felt lighter. And somewhere behind her, a man who once waited alone now waited with hope. Weeks passed, and the bus stop became more than a place of waiting. It turned into a small corner of belonging. Aisha came every Friday now. Sometimes with tea, sometimes with fruit, sometimes with nothing at all except time. Mr. Rahman waited for her, not with expectation, but with gratitude that had softened his once lonely eyes. One afternoon, she noticed something different. A second bench was occupied. A woman sat there, nervously twisting the strap of her bag. Mr. Rahman leaned toward Aisha and whispered, "She lost her husband last year. She doesn't talk much, but she listens." Aisha greeted her gently. No questions. No pressure. Just a smile. The woman returned it, hesitant but real. Soon, the silence between the benches began to fill. A student joined while waiting for his late bus. A fruit seller paused longer than usual. An office worker stayed after missing her ride, choosing conversation over convenience. Stories floated through the air, about children, about jobs lost and found, about small joys like morning sunlight and shared laughter. No one was judged. No one was rushed. One day, Mr. Rahman didn't come. Aisha arrived early, scanning the familiar faces. The bench was empty. The paper bag was gone. A worry settled in her chest. She waited long after the buses came and left, feeling the absence more strongly than she expected. The following Friday, he returned, slower, leaning on a walking stick. "I was ill," he explained softly. "But I didn't want to disappear without coming back." Aisha helped him sit, her relief hidden behind a smile. That day, she realized compassion isn't just about showing up once, it's about returning, even when it's hard. As evening approached, Mr. Rahman stood with effort. "You know," he said, looking around at the small group now gathered, "I used to think my life was ending quietly. But it's only changing." Aisha watched as others nodded, as if his words belonged to them too. When she finally left, the bus stop buzzed with soft conversation. What began as a single pause in the rain had grown into a shared space of care. And Aisha understood something simple and powerful. Compassion doesn't need a voice loud enough to be heard by many, only a heart brave enough to begin.